Let me know when we want to start.
Will do. All right, we are live on YouTube and we have 7 attendees, so you are ready whenever you are.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to the Camarillo and Oxnard Airport Authorities for October 14th. Appreciate everyone being here today. First of all, let's do a Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Camarillo, would you like to lead us on that?
Sure. Please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Truncated.
Thank you very much. Next will be the roll call. First is Camarillo.
Chair Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
I'm here.
Vice Mayor Molche,
Present.
Councilmember Santangelo,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Thomas,
I'm here.
Alternate Public Member Michael Hodson.
Present.
Camarillo has a quorum.
Thank you. And Oxnard?
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perallo,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Here.
Chair Calhoun.
Present.
Oxnard has a quorum.
Thank you very much. Then moving on to our agenda review. Do we have any changes to our agenda?
No, we're aware of.
Well, I would like to say that we have our very own Keith Freitas here today, and wanted to make sure that everyone got to put a face to the name. So Dave Naffy, thank you so much for coordinating this with Keith to make sure we had him today. I know hopefully we'll have a chance in the director's report to go some more, but I just wanted to make sure that he had a chance right now just to say hello.
Hello to everybody. Thank you for the invite and look forward to being there starting Monday. Looking forward to it. Great opportunity, very exciting, and more to come, but thank you.
Thank you very
Welcome
much.
aboard.
Okay, well, we'll have more to that, but I just couldn't not have his name on the screen and not make sure everyone knew who he was and so forth. Next is our approval of the minutes. And does anyone from Camarillo have any modifications to our minutes?
Thomas, recommend approval for the minutes.
Thank you. Second by Milche, thank you. And any further discussion? A roll call, please.
Chair Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Councilmember Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Thomas.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And I'll pass this over to Walter, our chair for Oxnard.
All those, Oxnard, all those in favor of the motion? Or do I have a motion? I guess I don't have a motion. I'll make a motion. We accept that as it reads.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
You have to have a roll call in between there.
Roll call, please.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perallo,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Chair Calhoun.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And next we have our public comment period. Is there any public comments for today?
Supervisor Long, can I make an announcement to the public?
Yes, please.
If you would like to be added to the public comment queue, please be connected via Zoom. If not already connected and wish to make a public comment, you can find the Zoom link on the last page of the meeting agenda, which can be found at ventura.org/airports. /meetings-calendar. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 5, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. And we could do a minute countdown.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate having our public have access to this meeting. And are there any public comments for items not on the agenda for public comment, number 5?
We do have one that I will put through.
Okay, thank you.
And his name is Ben.
Okay. Ben, you have your, I believe it's 3 minutes.
Ben, if you're muted, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
There we go. Sorry about that. I wanted to comment on the airport, and I'm not sure. I thought we were on the agenda under new business, but when I looked at the printed agenda, we weren't there. So I don't know if I have to comment in public comments or under new business. Can anybody tell me that?
I don't know what your topic is on, so if you could.
Airport noise and abatement.
We do have an agenda item for that.
Yes,
Okay.
on number 8.
Okay, I didn't see that on the printed agenda, so I will reserve my comment for number 8.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
I'll remute.
We'll get there. Okay, are there any other comments?
No other
Carrie?
comments at this time.
Okay, wonderful. Then we will move on to item number 6, which is the new business. A, the second amendment for the lease with RKR Incorporated for the rent payments for 12 months and provide the county use of the county's water credits. So Dave Naffey?
Supervisor Long, that was from last month. So let's.
I have the wrong agenda in front of me. That's what the deal is.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
I could get
Go
us
ahead.
going if, okay. So the 6A for this session is receive and file a presentation from the Department of Airports addressing comments from the chair of Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Council, and staff request that your authority receive and file a presentation from the Department of Airports addressing comments from Walter Hagedome, chair of Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Council. So this is a receive and file request. And so setting the table a little bit before we get into the slides, well, heck, it hasn't been that long since we were together, has it? It was October 14th. And Mr. Hagedome joined the meeting, made his 3-minute presentation, and then your authority, the Oxnard Authority, asked staff to come back with comments or a presentation regarding what Mr. Hagedome had requested us to address, and so I'm prepared to provide that commentary now. And John, flip forward. So so just real quick before we get to the comment itself, I thought it would make sense for us to kind of go through just the basics of what the airport does and what we can and can't do relative to aircraft flight. So airport noise roles and responsibilities. You see, we have the pilot there, and the County of Ventura, Department of Airports, and FAA. So slide. This graphic indicates the different types of things that happen at the airport and the different roles that we have. So the pilot is responsible for the safe operation of aircraft in the air and on the ground. So they are in control of their airplane, no question about it. FAA, moving to the right side of the graphic, cites some code language there relative to their sovereignty over the airspace. So what that means is that we cannot create rules, we cannot govern the airspace on and over the airport or any of the surrounding areas. That is completely the jurisdiction of the FAA. They set the rules that airplanes and pilots operate under and the noise standards. And they certify the aircraft and the pilots, and in the case of Oxnard Airport, the airport itself. So Ventura County, as the owner of Oxnard Airport and Camarillo Airport, we have no ability to control aircraft in flight. That is done by FAA, and so we can do some things in a voluntary basis. We can establish an ordinance relative to certain types of activities while the aircraft are on the ground. But again, once the aircraft leaves the ground, then that becomes the purview of FAA. And this is regulation that goes back decades, to the beginnings of flight and to the Commerce Clause of the United States. So land use regulations, these are things that we can do from a regulatory standpoint. From municipalities can promote compatible land use through zoning ordinances, but aircraft themselves are exempt. Counties, in the same fashion, responsible for maintaining the safe airport and working with communities when necessary to observe their jurisdiction. The state of California has the ability to compel the disclosure to real estate transactions about the presence of an airport, and requires sound insulation for new residential construction within 60 CNEL. That is a noise annualized metric, and enables land use planning through the adoption of zoning and the general plan. So we have airport land use compatibility guidelines that are published, and Oxnard and Camarillo participate in that. And then the United States, through the Part 150 study, and I'll mention that again in just a minute, through land use compatibility planning process, but they don't have any police power. So they rely on the cities and the counties that do have the police power to enact good, smart land use compatibility planning and good decision-making relative to the location of specific types of developments in and around airports. And that's done to make sure that we have at least the ability to control what's happening around our airports and to protect the citizens from unwanted aircraft noise, but also in reverse to say that that the airport should be protected from the pressures that neighborhoods and other noise sensitive uses might exert on it as they go forward. So go ahead, next slide. So who is responsible for the operation of Oxnard Airport? The FAA is responsible for managing airspace and ensuring the safe and efficient flow of air traffic. So that is happening at Oxnard Airport through the airport tower, which is there with staff trained by FAA, operating on behalf of FAA, but they're actually it's a contract. And so they're not FAA employees, but they carry all of that authority. The FBOs use that term FBO, fixed base operations, essentially service providers. They provide aircraft maintenance, flight training kinds of things. They are businesses on the airport that cater to the aircraft owner and operator. And they're responsible for their own operations and their scheduling. Then we have individuals who own aircraft or who rent aircraft and hangars, and they're also responsible for their own aircraft. Slide. So what is it that the airports, Department of Airports can do? We're responsible for maintaining the physical portion of what the airport is. That's the airfield, the lighting, the turf, aircraft control tower, which we happen to own and lease to the contract tower, the buildings on the airport, the perimeter fence and gates. We're responsible for the security and the safety. And we do have the ability to establish ordinances or rules and regulations on the airport relative to things that happen on the ground, like maintenance run-ups. That would be if coming out of a maintenance operation, an airplane needed to be accelerating its engine while on the ground, and what have you. But then we also have the ability to establish voluntary noise abatement procedures. And again, these can't be regulatory. That's not within our jurisdiction, but we can study and put out there ways to operate airplanes and communicate to the pilot community and to the businesses that operate at the airport about ways to operate in a fly-friendly type of manner. So I think that's really getting to the nugget of what we would like to talk about. Go ahead, slide. We've heard about the voluntary noise abatement procedure that had been on the website, and we hear reference to the fact that it was up for a while and it was pulled down, and maybe there's some suspicion about that. Here it is. This is a pilot guide that was produced in November 2006, so 15 years ago. It had a little bit of information about the businesses that were operating at the time. You could actually catch a flight at that time. But at the bottom, it says compliance with recommended noise abatement procedures is encouraged. No procedure should be allowed to compromise flight safety. So we just want to make sure that we recognize that nothing that was published or put out there for the consumption of the pilots was intended to be regulatory in any way or create any type of compulsory sense to what we were asking. So, but you see it was kind of dated. Good, flip to the next one. And here we have a flight track. We have green loops that appear with the airport's runway in the center, and some things that are suggesting to the pilot how to operate safely. We have some crosshatched areas where we had noise sensitive uses. And what makes this graphic just a little bit out of date and kind of needing to be updated is a couple of things. One is that in the noise sensitive uses that you see, the latest development isn't depicted there, which extends north now to Woolley Road, in that area where the harbor has been extended up, and that's to the east of the Edison Canal there. So that isn't depicted. But I also want to mention that according to our consultant who prepared this, who is still engaged with airport planning for us, indicates that the green loops that are shown there were placed there to suggest the direction to turn, so that if you are on the south side of the runway, you are making turns. If you're landing to the west, you're making turns to the left, and if you're landing to the east, you're going to make turns again to the left. And so you'll be on the north side of the runway in that case. The suggestion was that it was graphical, that it was not intended for navigation. It was not intended to show exactly where over the ground you should fly. And in fact, if you look on the east side of that graphic, you'll see that it doesn't even make it to up to Ventura Road. And that's just unrealistic that a pilot could fly that exact track. For the reasons stated just there, it felt like, because of its age and because of the fact that it was it was depicting an unrealistic track over the ground and confusing people who were making home purchase decisions and looking at a graphic like this and saying, you know what, I have no expectation that an airplane could be over my head while in the traffic pattern. It felt like it was wise to not put this out there and hold it up as a current resource for pilots. Or if we did have people making home owning decisions about where they might expect to have airplanes overfly, this would not be helpful. So, but that's why it was taken down. And it wasn't meant to be anything that avoided difficult truths about the way the airplanes are supposed to fly. So go ahead and flip to the next one. Okay, is there a minimum altitude that pilots or that airplanes can fly over residential areas? And here's some code here, part 91, 119 of the Code of Federal Regulations. That's everything that pilots and others in aviation are going to be looking at when they're looking at aircraft in flight. Fixed-wing airplanes must maintain an altitude of 1,000 feet when operating over congested or densely populated areas, but it has a cutout. It doesn't apply when aircraft are taking off or landing. And according to FAA, helicopters have no minimum altitude requirements. And that's true for when weather and safety and other air traffic permit. So generally speaking, aircraft in the traffic pattern are either taking off or landing. They're getting ready to land or they're in the process of taking off. So the 1,000 feet it's good to attain that altitude at some point during the touch and go operation. But the expectation is that they're not going to be at 1,000 feet immediately after taking off. And if they do happen to overfly areas, there's going to be a period of time when they're still climbing or they are descending. And so that's just that's part of what that operation looks like. And so we don't really have an expectation that airplanes are going to be over the top of homes by at least 1,000 feet because it's just not realistic. And it's not the way aircraft are operating within that traffic pattern. Go ahead and slide. So do pilots or the FAA need any permission to fly aircraft over our homes? And here we go back to the United States government has the exclusive sovereignty over airspace per United States Code Title 49, Section 4103. And this is the idea that says for the commerce of the United States and the states way back, we have to say that that is the sovereignty of the United States relative to aircraft flying over personal property, subject to some minimum altitudes, which you might expect that aircraft have the ability to overfly personal property, and really that's just to avoid the awful circumstance where somebody could be in the middle of Kansas and has an airplane fly over 7 miles above them, and they go, you're trespassing. You'd never have any interstate commerce. You'd never have any type of reasonable system where airplanes could get from A to B. So that's why that happens. You zoom in close to the airport and you can see that there are some cutouts to say, there's some unrealistic expectations. You shouldn't have somebody fly over your house at 50 feet, but they're within reason or for takeoff or landing. That's permissible. So part of the trick of where to place homes and churches and hospitals and things like that are noise sensitive, keep them back a reasonable distance, create buffers, use good noise compatibility, land use planning methods, and you should be in a successful course of action, as your community develops, to avoid having that become a threat to your airport. And this really is it's the job of the airport owner, Ventura County in this case, and staff to see to it that these threats are minimized. FAA has a number of assurances that are signed every time we take a grant that says we're going to work hard to do this, that we're going to do a good job diligently protecting the airport from the threat of closure or have its viability reduced because of noise incompatibility issues. And they pour money into it. They pour resources. They pour training, and so we can take advantage of all these things as we go through. Go ahead and flip to the next. So what is our plan? Staff is developing a program to address community concerns over aircraft noise. I mean, it's the way it is. That's exactly what we're up to. It may look like we're going slowly, but there are some reasons to go slowly, to use care as we produce these, execute these plans. So 3 key objectives form the core of the program: communicate and educate, track and follow up, and refine and update studies. So we can go through each of those. Next, please. So in terms of the communicate and educate, staff actions include an updated website that we've been working to stand up with new voluntary noise resources for pilots. And I'll go through these bullets and then we can come back to that top one because it's got a nice little link that we can see what we're up to and in the draft form. Staff actions include providing new dedicated noise lines, which we've done. And we have a website noise comment option. We can click a link on our new website and get to a form where we can leave complaints without having to speak to anybody. Investigating all noise complaints received and responding when asked. And we frequently do reply and call people back or respond with an email. Providing new interactive pilot guides posted to the website, and we'll go through those in a sec. And we are in discussions with FAA regional headquarters personnel regarding right traffic. So that's been a request for us to examine that. And Fabiola Garcia couldn't be with us tonight, but hopefully can speak to our authority in December and lead us through exactly what the FAA process is. But it's not quick. And it's not quick because it requires a defined process. And so if we're going to be changing officially from our left traffic to right traffic, or incorporating some piece of that into our noise abatement program, we need to communicate that and establish that carefully and with good understanding about the impacts, both to the safety and risk of safe flight, but also from an environmental standpoint. So both of those are important. And we also presented to the neighborhood council. Hopefully somebody gets that. Sorry about that. So we'll go back to the link, the new voluntary noise resources. If John, you could bring that up. So this is our new website portal here, and we have a noise program that we describe, and then we discuss both airports. So if we click on the Oxnard Airport arrival and departure procedures button there, that'll take us to a landing page dedicated to Oxnard Airport. And we can see that now we have resources for pilots, a little bit of weather, a little orientation map, a description of our voluntary noise abatement items. But then we also see that we can click down and find out exactly how to fly the runway 25 touch and go pattern, which is published as a left pattern. And we see that we have a depiction of an airplane that's flying over Woolley Road or north of Woolley Road, which would be nice, but certainly not south of, and recognizing that we have a larger noise sensitive area than our prior pilot guide had provided. So we have depictions of all of the different ways to fly the traffic pattern or arrive at the airport. And these are suggestions. And so pilots can look at this and get a little better understanding about how we fly the patterns here at Oxnard Airport, but also at Camarillo. We've developed noise little diagrams for both airports. So in the spirit of giving pilots as much information as possible about how to fly safely and how to fly noise friendly at both airports, we're developing these resources for that purpose. So we can move on to the next slide of the show, John. Okay, so in the track and follow up, staff is seeking to implement a system with the following features. And this is through a vendor that we've been in contact with who has the ability to do this. And it seems like a fairly reasonable cost, although it's not cheap, and really it is something that we'll look hard at, but it seems like it's within reach of the resources that we have for this. But it would be a web-based interface for reporting and potentially tracking complaints about overflights. So we would have the ability to log on to our website, find a map depicting all of the different planes that have been flying around, and with a 10-minute delay, be able to identify a particular airplane and say, I'd like to flag that particular airplane that flew over my house 10 minutes ago, or what have you. Learn more about what that operation was, and if you'd like to leave a complaint about it, it's tied straight to that particular aircraft operation, and it provides a procedure for following up and providing status. So it'll have the ability to track any complaints that are generated by a user, and it's an integrated system that allows staff to be able to follow up with whatever user was flagged, and so we could send them a little bit of hey, did you know, kind of thing, where if it's a repeat offender, then, kind of ramp up a little bit in terms of how we communicate and say, hey, we think that this is something that you guys need to work on. So it's a track and follow up kind of thing. And so we're hopeful about this and getting this stood up in fairly short order. John, the next one. And then continue to refine and update studies. The noise exposure map update. So I'm going to describe a little bit the part 150. And that's a FAA part. It's some guidance for how to prepare a noise evaluation, and part of that is a noise exposure map. It's time to update those, and so because this is an urgent matter, we've been working with FAA to get these funded in this upcoming fiscal year, and setting a couple of other priorities aside in order to get that funding stood up, so that we approach FAA and say this is among the most important things that we're looking at. And what that'll do is to allow us the ability to bring in at FAA expense, at least with their partnership and their rules and techniques, and then community engagement, and look at all the alternatives that we could have. So for dealing with noise. It's an effective land use compatibility tool. These are ingested into master plans. They're ingested into other land use compatibility plans at the regional level, including the Ventura County Transportation Commission. And it's an effective way to gain support of FAA and Caltrans. So we get them speaking that language. We are speaking the language that they speak. It helps them unlock dollars if any dollars are needed to address these items. And so this is again anticipated in 2022. It's in our capital improvement program, and we're going to finalize that program with FAA this coming Wednesday. Go ahead. So back to the comment received on the 14th by Mr. Hagedorn. They made a request of your authority that they would like to have a fly-friendly program consisting of one, pilots to request right traffic for runway 25, and two, if not possible, to fly a tight left pattern, and three, to conduct meetings with stakeholders. So, so we've got all of those covered. The right traffic is to, to establish that as something that we can have pilots requesting as on a policy basis on it. They say, I am told by my voluntary noise abatement program, of course it's voluntary, but if we're going to suggest that they should be asking the tower for that, we should understand what risks are introduced into the system by their being able to do that. And so we want to do that. We're asking FAA to help us to understand that better. And I mentioned Fabiola is going to help us with that. If not possible, fly a tight left pattern. We believe that flying along Woolley Road offers that, and a little bit further to the north, if that's possible, especially along the undeveloped areas in the farmland there. And then conducting meetings with stakeholders. And I would say that now with Keith Freitas coming on board, our bandwidth is going up immensely. And we should be able to move with his guidance into our posture of really getting out there in the community and having these kinds of conversations and working within the Part 150 of the noise exposure map updates to facilitate those conversations and to have the data that we need to speak intelligently about that. We heard a discussion of the recommendations for the Camarillo Airport Part 150 from Mr. Hagedorn, and he made mention of some items discussed there in that document, which doesn't apply to Oxnard Airport, but he did correctly point out that you can make suggestions for the ways pilots can fly that are more friendly, to recognize that noise and overflight is an issue, and that whatever we can do to kind of tighten things up and to avoid overflight or fly higher or choose different flight paths where that can be safely done, and where the tower is expecting that to happen, and you can get a clearance for that. That's totally okay. And so we'll make sure that we understand that what applies to Oxnard is appropriate for that purpose. And then we also heard of a environmental impact report, which is a California type of environmental study that was completed in 1998 for the North Shore at Mandalay Bay housing project, which isn't done. It was discussed however many years ago that was, 23 years ago. And still hasn't come to fruition. It's directly on Centerline to the west of the airport. I spoke about staff's responsibility in guiding good decision-making relative to the approval of land uses. And so here we have an example where if we know that we've got people who are frustrated with airport operations, who are even further away, both in distance and in elevation from a proposed housing development right off Centerline, we can see that moving forward and approving the North Shore of at Mandalay Bay, or whatever it's called now, would be just fraught with frustration for lots of people. They would move in, they would be frustrated with the airport, they would complain. We would be having to make some decisions about whether or not this impacts the airport. Over time, this is going to be more and more troublesome for staff, for the county who has to deal with it, for the city of Oxnard who has residents who are frustrated and reaching out. And so what we're seeing now, even with people at further distance, is going to be troublesome. Mr. Hagedorn's particular comments here indicates what theoretically the airport could do to avoid overflight of the North Shore at Mandalay project. And that was going to be to turn 20 degrees to the right, which would be a little bit to the north of west, and avoid overflying them. So that was the idea there. Mr. Hagedorn indicated that that would help in the situation for Oxnard Shores or for Seabridge or the other developments to the south. I don't know that that is necessarily something that would relieve those populations from noise, but we can certainly have that incorporated into studies and comments that we received. And then requested the authority pass a resolution denying access for touch and goes by pilots not based at Oxnard Airport. And we just really don't have that authority. That would be a violation of federal law. So, you know, it's our ability to affect that, to make that situation better, is to continue to do the things that I indicated that staff is doing. And that's primarily in the outreach category, and working in the education end of it, so that we can fly a left-hand pattern that's nice and tight and avoids, to the extent we can, overflight, climbing as high as you can as early as possible, and then turning early away from Oxnard Shores. So those are the things that we're looking to do. That addresses, I believe, in a fairly windy way. I'm sorry if that drug on, but I think it's important that we kind of understand the basic framework about how staff works issues related to noise, and how we were looking to address the comments that the chair of the Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Council brought to us on the 14th. So with that, do I have another slide? I don't think I do. Nope. So that's the end of the presentation, and so I'll throw it back to the chair.
Supervisor Dave, thank you so much for bringing this back. I know that Councilmember Camarillo and Bill Thomas had brought this up. I will pass this over to the chair of Oxnard. Walter, this is your item.
First of all, are there any comments from any of my members on this item?
Yeah, I think both Supervisor Ramirez and Bill Thomas have a question.
Yeah, Bill.
I just want to say that I know there are a number of people who have let me know they've made email comments and they wish that they would be read into the record. I think there's about 6 people, so I'd like to make sure that we listen to their comments at the appropriate moment.
How about now?
Hey, Walter, I'd like to make a comment on Dave's presentation. I think we'll have time for comments from the authority after we have the public comments. Is that how you want to do it?
Well, I don't consider this part of the authority comments, frankly, but
no. But I have a question for Dave. That's why I wanted to do it before the authority comment.
Okay, well, go ahead.
One of the organizations that has the most to do with the decisions is not involved in your discussion points, and that's the school district. The last I heard, and maybe I'm incorrect, but I think that the school district has 2 or 3 projects that they have decided are going to be on the north side or the right-hand pattern of the area that we're talking about. Could you give us an update on possibly either you or Oxnard, or maybe supervisors can tell us where the school board is right at the moment on those 2 projects?
Member Thomas, I don't believe I have the latest and greatest on that. I do know that the Teal Club, in general, that development incorporates a number of different uses. I have heard that schools are a piece of that, but I don't have the latest information about that. The projects that I'm aware of, there's one that's on the east side of Ventura Road, and then there's one that's south of 5th. That's called Portofino. But I haven't heard mention of the latest things going on Teal Club relative to schools especially. So maybe other folks present can offer up.
It's pretty quiet.
Bert, I see your hand, and also Mike Hodgson, just so that you can see that, Walter.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, can I add something, Walter?
Yes, please do. Go ahead, Bert.
Yes, I'm not involved with the school district, and the school district has purchased property at the corner of Doris and Patterson. My understanding is they plan to build a school, possibly a junior high school and an elementary school, but that's as much as I know about it. I don't know more than that. I know that that was an issue, strongly held views on this airport authority with respect to the school district getting the property. And it is a concern to the residents in the Camarillo neighborhood, which is adjacent to that property. Other than that, I can't speak for the school, as I don't know. I want to say this. I want to thank Mr. Thomas for allowing us to get on board. I want to thank Mr. Hagedorn for asking, and for the public that's watching this. This is an example of when the public comes and they ask for something to be done, a body can work with the public to get it addressed. As I've said before, you may not like all the answers and you may not like all the factual information given to you, but you do have an opportunity to hear and be heard. And again, thank you to the staff for the presentation. Thank you, Walt.
Yeah, well, thank you for your comments. And, this is an ideal time to, if there is an issue concerning the airport, the new airport installations, this would certainly be the time to raise those issues and make it abundantly clear that they are not a good thing, at least as far as I'm concerned. Mike, did you have something?
Well, it doesn't concern the school district, but it concerns me somewhat, the noise online, ability of people to find out specifics about aircraft and what they're doing. And I'm concerned about the privacy issue. We've had problems in the past with people finding out specific registration information about aircraft that are making people unhappy, and they've sometimes taken it too far and posed threats to people, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm concerned that privacy is going to be maintained in the system, much like noise. People that file noise complaints are not specifically identified, but more of it's whatever 500 block of such and such a street. I'm concerned that people are going to get too much information and abuse that information.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I agree with that also. Well, I had a quick comment. I hope that this we have an opportunity to be able to sit down with these people and other interested parties, such as the FAA, and I'm speaking about them predominantly. They have first of all the most skin in the game, if you pardon the expression, but some of the solutions to the flight patterns, just taking one as an example, and that would be an early turnout to the right to avoid those areas. I can tell you, as an ancient flight instructor in this area, by introducing an early right turn, you pose a threat to incoming aircraft that all join the downwind on the right-hand north side of the pattern, and they typically come in at a much higher rate of speed, certainly higher than they would be if they were coming from the east. Very often 180, 200 knots. And they usually come in the pattern, join the pattern a little bit wider, but not necessarily. But regardless, if you make an early right turn, you're in a 90-degree conflict with that traffic. And I know of coming in a million times, especially at sunset, it's almost impossible to see that aircraft. They make a right turn and they start their climb, which is exactly going to put them at where the top of the pattern before you start down your base leg there. So that's just one example of where the FAA and the laws and the requirements they carry with you are not only a concern, but they're a logistic issue as far as what can be done safely and what can't be done. And just to have suggestions that sound like a good idea may not necessarily be so. And it takes, I think, a lot of scrutiny and some time to delve through these various items to clarify for people who don't understand and never would the intricacies of the flight patterns and the FAA and all of their nuances. So I guess it really gets the point. But I think it's critical that the public and the North occupants understand what's involved. Thank
Okay,
you.
you also have Susan Santangelo and then Supervisor Ramirez, 2 hands up.
Santangelo, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Then.
I just wanted to comment on, I really like the changes, Dave, to the website with the pilot information, but it just, while you were talking, I was kind of navigating through, and my suggestion would be to add the noise abatement information to, or a link to it, to the pilot information page. You have to choose 2 different, you either go to pilot information or noise abatement. It seems to me that the noise abatement should be right there on the pilot information. That's just my my thoughts. And then just to follow up on the previous comment, is there an expectation of privacy when you're a pilot flying into a public airport? I don't know who can answer that, but it seems to me that I'm just wondering if there's an expectation of privacy.
I could take a stab at it. I do know that the FAA has the ability to offer a screening of name and ownership for pilots who choose that. For those that don't, then that information is compiled and put out there. And there's a couple of publicly available flight tracking pieces. What we're talking about is a mature system. VNOMS is what they call it, noise operation something management software. It was developed specifically for that, and it includes a 10-minute delay. So it's people don't get to run out in the yard and point at it, holding their phone and saying, "I know who you are." But you know, the idea is that you can flag an airplane in flight that flew over you, figure out which one it was by the time it happened, and even if you can't read information about it, you can flag it and say, "We'd like staff to follow up," and then we have the ability to ask our vendor to generate communication to that, but with you know, stripping back the information that pilot had indicated they would rather not be made public. So, long answer.
Okay, thank you.
And then there's Supervisor Ramirez with her hand up.
Thank you, Supervisor Long, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Naffy, thank you for the report. Again, later, looking forward to hearing the comments of our members of the public about this. If there's been issues about privacy raised when people can perhaps complain about a particular aircraft or individual pilot, I'd like to know what those privacy issues that have been raised. I haven't heard of this before. I would like to be informed. I would ask that you do that, Mr. Naffy, and let me know what I believe it's Mr. Calhoun was mentioning. I'd appreciate that. And the other is, at some point, I have seen a presentation twice now by the neighborhood council talking about safety issues, health issues, a number of things which I found very informative. And I would like to see that presentation presented to the full airport authority board. And I'd like to figure out how to do that. I understand that there's been a question asked whether or not they could get on the agenda. And I think that if a member of the board here asked for it, like myself, that would be entertained. So perhaps we can address that later. I think they have very significant information to share, particularly, I would just say, flight schools use airport or Oxnard Airport for touch and go, and they have a right to. I understand very well Commerce Clause of the United States and the ability of people to move around and drive around and fly around. But there are limits to what people can do that when it potentially could impact human life and safety and the environment. So I think it would be good to see that presentation by all the members and then be able to ask some questions. I realize this is complicated. There's no simple quick fix, but I really appreciate the effort to work on this. It's very much of concern to my constituents. And I think everybody's concerned about everybody's health. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anyone else on the queue?
I don't have my hand raised, but I will. I wanted to say thank you very much to Dave Naffey for bringing this. I know we have public comment in a minute, but when we were putting this agenda together, and Councilmember Camarillo, thank you for requesting that questions from the public comment get answered. And so that was the reason for today's agenda item. I think that's very important that we address the comments of our community. And also, I think it's important the education that all of us had as new members of the Airport Authority and our new Keith Freitas here to understand the requirements of what we can do as an airport authority versus the FDA versus county or city. I think that's very important. This is a very difficult conversation to have. My own personal point is that we do not become a Santa Monica airport, which is shut down because of noise and because of other things. So I want to make sure that we are listening to our community and working together, and the rules and regulations of FAA are followed and so forth. I do not want public safety to be risked because of certain things. And I wanted to be very clear about that as we move forward. I know the presentations that are coming up, I really appreciate. And I hear Supervisor Ramirez's request to have a presentation, and I think that is definitely something that can be done because we do need to collaborate. That's what Ventura County is best of, is collaboration and working together. And so I just want to make sure and throw a little caution in the air as we hear schools are being put into flight zones, and we hear housing being put into flight zones, and then the reverse comes back and it's the airport's fault. And so that is a very huge concern of mine, because I know housing is an issue and we have to be good partners, whether it's the county, the city, the neighborhood councils and so forth. We have to work together. So I'll get off my platform of preaching this, but it will be something I will continue to beat that drum, because I think that's so important, that the airport is a commodity and a huge investment and support system for our Oxnard. So with that, Councilmember Camarillo is hand up.
Councilman
Yes.
Camarillo, please.
Yes, Mr. Calhoun, Chair. I would like to thank Ms. Santangelo for looking at the website and bringing that point up. The point that she brings up about the noise connected, having to look at two separate screens. Thank you very much. That sounds like a very good common sense change that could be made before this thing becomes, set in stone, if possible. Sounds like a very good common sense. And the most important, I'm a non-flyer. I mean, I ride, but I'm not a pilot. The comments that Mr. Calhoun gave with respect to other aircraft, speed at certain times of the day, the visibility, being able to see other things, they're very important to me. Extremely important, because again, you could say I'm a landlubber. I don't fly. I've been appointed to this council. I appreciate it, but people that are pilots want us to realize they've got seat of the pants experience, and it's very significant. I thank all the comments that have been made so far. Thank you.
We're going to get you up, Bert, soon. I just real quickly, I'd like to echo Supervisor Long's comments. I think Dave did just a superb job on this. When I first read the commentary on this and what was required, I just got, oh my goodness, what in the world? What are we going to do? How do you even start doing something like that? And I just thought his approach to the whole report, the whole episode, and how he organized it, and it was professional and educational without being partisan at all, was just absolutely outstanding. So thank you, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair Calhoun. Could I make a clarifying question for Supervisor Ramirez?
Please do.
So thank you for your comment. Could you point me a little bit, you mentioned a presentation you'd seen twice, and I just want to make sure I'm thinking of the correct one. We've had, I believe, Steve Tannehill has addressed this body with about a 20-minute presentation that he's given to the neighborhood councils. Is that the one you refer to?
Yes.
So were you asking for a
No, I think, no, let me be clear. Really asking that it be agendized for a fuller discussion where they could participate.
Okay.
Maybe I can ask Claire. So you want us to see the presentation again and then have dialogue between staff and them in regards to the requests? Or I just want to make sure we're clear.
Well, I'd like to be able to engage them more than public comment during the meeting in some fashion. I understand, I remember the presentation, I've seen it before as well, to discuss some of these issues and have a presentation, particularly about safety issues, what could be done, what can't be done, what we can work on together to make it a little safer, because I do believe they've raised some very important safety issues as well as health issues about perhaps lead gas being used and by some of the older planes that is falling on the community.
Could I make a comment, please?
Go ahead, Bill.
I think that Dave's plan for getting community meetings and stakeholders and tower are all very apropos. And I really don't think that having a safety meeting at the authority level as a first time up would be very productive. I think a lot of data-free analysis would be going on. I really like the approach that the airport is taking, and I think that we ought to let the process work, Supervisor Ramirez, until they have some actual data that we can sit and listen to and participate. Great, but the people that really need to do it are the tower, the Department of Airports, the community, and getting the FAA involved. Other than that, we'll be going over the same presentation multiple times.
And I appreciate you saying that, Bill. I would also like to make sure that we have our new director coming in and Keith having a chance to be a part of the meetings with those groups in the town halls and making sure that we do the outreach. That is what we need to be doing. I concur that I don't think this is going to be settled on one meeting, and we need to have the whole neighborhood community do the outreach, as Dave had mentioned earlier.
Any other input?
Susan Santangelo, council member.
I don't know, maybe Supervisor Ramirez can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the point that she was trying to make was to bring back that presentation as an agendized item so that there could be a discussion with the public. I I don't recall that happening in a robust way, but when we had that presentation. So I just wanted to clarify. I might be wrong, Supervisor Ramirez. Feel free to correct me.
Well, I think you're right, and it has been presented before, but I think that some of the questions that people have could really use, and perhaps you're right, Chair, that we need the data first to do it. I would really appreciate the participation in some of our meetings and future meetings with whoever represents the FAA, because I recognize this is complicated, but it seems like an essential party here is not hearing any of the public's comments or the concerns of the neighborhood. And I think that would be a good thing. I don't know if that's a possibility, Mr. Nexi.
Supervisor Ramirez, thank you. I did reach out to FAA to see if they could participate in this meeting. And the answer back from Favi was, I'm on vacation, but perhaps we can work a future meeting. And I said, would you please consider the 9th of December, which is the next time this body meets. And so I expect to hear back. Absolutely. I have no doubt. And just to be clear, we did go several weeks into a strategy of getting all of the individual FAAs, and I say that kind of like the different people in different places in the organization all kind of feed in. So we have the tower people, and we have the airport's district office people who write checks for us and look at our environmental documents, and we have flight standards people, and there's a bunch of different FAA types. And I was gathering them all together and then saying, hey, can we have a big meeting? And then at that point, I was going to stitch in the neighborhood councils, and we would just meet. And Fabiola intercepted that and says, look, this isn't the way it's done. And asked to meet with me personally. And it's from that point forward that we've been working one-on-one to address these and to get this process moving the correct direction. And so I'm trusting that that's the way FAA needs to operate. And she's feeding me the information needed to make sure that we're doing this appropriately and not getting ourselves in a situation that we have to walk some things back. So.
I will just say I appreciate that, and I realize it's complicated, but I think you can see the optics here is a federal agency is naturally in control of a lot of things and doesn't have the ability to hear input directly from the residents. And I think that's something that I'd like to see us work to get the FAA to at least be more visibly listening, as opposed to having it funneled through any of us or through the airport authority. I'd like to see a little better communication.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I really appreciated the dialogue here. It helps for staff when we go to the next agenda to make sure we're very clear in what we're setting. So thank you. Go ahead, Walter.
Oh, I was just almost regrets. Sorry. I just wanted to comment. I've had some dealings with the FAA, not like you'd think, but on a professional level. And they have a strong tendency to reject any interactions of this type for some reason. They just don't want to get involved with community affairs or FSDO actions or cities or anything else unless they're absolutely mandated to by their supervisors. So I think that we find out who the manager of the FSDO is, for instance, and say, hey, we've got a little situation here, and we'd like to just have you come up and learn about it or come to a meeting or something like that and document it in writing and see what their responses are. Because otherwise, I think it's just like pushing a donkey cart uphill. It's almost impossible to get them to come, at least in a voluntary basis. We got to use a little persuasive something or other.
That's kind of disturbing, but I'll leave it there.
Do we have public comment? I believe we have 6 letters and perhaps there's someone that wants to speak.
Yes, I can make the announcement for the public. If you would like to be added to the public comment queue, please be connected via Zoom. If not already connected and wish to make a public comment, you can find the Zoom link on the last page of the meeting agenda, which can be found at ventura.org/airports/meetings-calendar. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6A, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, please press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. And we do have a raised hand.
I'm gonna promote Ben back to a panelist so he can unmute himself. Ben, you are promoted. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for your participation and attention to this airport issue. Thank Mr. Naffy for his presentation and answering Walt's questions. I had something that I had written out, but after I've heard everything that I've heard, I'm just going to throw that out the window and kind of roll with a state of consciousness on what I've heard. Councilwoman Ramirez is absolutely correct. The communication on the issue has been abominable. Mr. Naffy did speak to the Sink Neighborhood Council. He was an invited guest, spoke for a few minutes, and one question was allowed to be asked. So were many of us on the call that had questions. Didn't happen. So I'm a little resentful that was on the slide, that it was a presentation, because I didn't see it that way. The issue is twofold. The first is the amount of air traffic. We're not trying to close the airport, but we get flights 200 to 300 in a month that are doing 10 to 20 touch and goes. We get a plane over this house on the beach every minute for hours at a time. It's like Chinese water torture. We have been trying to deal with the airport for 5 or 6 years personally, going back to the Homeowners Association, which is now defunct, about how do we deal with this? It really started when they started allowing all these flight schools. There are 6 flight schools that fly out of our area, mostly old planes, leaded fuel, flying over our community, over 4 elementary schools under the current flight pattern. So I'm concerned about safety. I'm concerned about the children in the school district. I don't know why they would even consider doing anything right next to the airport. And I think, we need to take a strong look at that. The safety issue, again, we've had 4 or 5 incidents in the last, year or two, dumping fuel, crash planes, bad landings, any number of things. As far as privacy goes, FlightAware tracks all of this. It gives you their tail number. It gives you their registration unless they block it. You can see the flight pattern that they fly. And that's how I make up the spreadsheet that I give to Walt Hagedorn, who sends it to the airport every month. When we first started complaining, we asked in February, how many complaints did you have? The airport said 2. I went back and looked at it and looked up all the flights, recorded the ones that were in violation of the flight abatement map, and there were 200. So it's time we really involve the public here and get everybody's point of view out there. They need to be a reasonable part of the community. And pilots from out of our area are welcome, but they should pay a fee, which they don't, from my understanding. The airport loses $1.4 million a year. We're inundated with no help from the airport as far as the FAA to this point. Hopefully that's changing. I'm glad it is. It sounds like we might finally be heard. Thank you.
Then we have one more, Walter Hagedorn. I'm going to promote you to a panelist. And Walter, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. I too am going to wing it. I had a presentation, but I thank you all and Mr. Naffy for the presentation. But I don't think you really addressed the EIR issue, and I'm not really trying to make a big deal about that, except the fact that I do think that the North Shores project is going ahead, and it will be subject to this. But the EIR was interesting in that it was the city of Oxnard that ran that and also ran the comments. And in those comments, they made my point in almost over a 2-page article where they were saying things like the city of Oxnard was proposing the 270 heading for aircraft 20 degrees north of route 108, which is right traffic. And they were bringing up points like they were using the 270 for between 7 and 8 in the morning to divert traffic away from Oxnard Shores, away from the mobile home park. And from 8 to 9, they were using 255, which is also a right traffic. And they also brought up the fact that the larger instrument departures were right traffic. And if you go on the website for pilots and you go in for the traffic, for the departure traffic, you're going to find Camarillo 6, which says turn right. And so when we say that we have to have some kind of an FAA study for going right, they've been going right for 25 years. And what the city of Oxnard said they said that they were going to, I'm going to say this, when the city of Oxnard suggested that a new Part 150 study should require all planes fly on a 270 course from the airport, it was an admission that flying left pattern was a problem and that they needed to be fixed. But this study was not required to continue the operations that had been going on, which were right traffic. Since we are not asking, the Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Council or Channel Island are asking for plans for all planes to turn right. Our suggestions are in concert with the current policy that does not require an FAA study. Anybody can ask for right traffic and get it. So we're asking for the following: that the flight schools, flight clubs, and pilots doing touch and go operations at Oxnard Airport be asked to request right traffic, not demanded. And if pilots request right traffic, the tower grant it if it is safe. And if the pilot turns left, that they be or request left traffic, that they're reminded to fly friendly and to stay east of the Edison Canal and north of Woolley Road. So we know these companies are out there, and I said our requests are reasonable and they conform with the decades-old operation policy at Oxnard Airport, and it should not take an act of Congress to induce pilots to fly friendly when a phone call to these flight schools or a meeting will do. Thank you.
Okay, and we have one more from
Chair Calhoun. I think, if I might,
Go ahead, Dave.
I think one little bit of a fact could help illuminate the question or the statement that I just heard, that that turning right from runway heading to a heading of 270 is the same thing as right traffic. Right traffic would be a 90-degree turn and then another 90-degree turn to return back to the airport. I think the 270 heading was going to be something where an airplane took off, was climbing rapidly and leaving the area. So like a jet that was departing. So that's what that is. Right traffic means that the airplane is going to return to land at the runway again in a practice maneuver. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks, Dave.
We have Jean-Pierre. I'm going to promote you to a panelist. Then we have Steve Tannehill, and we do have 11 written comments. So give me a second. Jean-Pierre, can you unmute yourself?
Gotcha. Thank you.
There you go. You have 3 minutes, sir.
I wanted to thank you all, first of all, for hearing me. I did want to say I live on the opposite end of Breakers Way in Oxnard Shores from where Ben, the previous speaker, lives. The fact is that you have an open invitation, any of you, to stop by the house and go up on my roof deck and watch these planes fly over. And I'm not a overly sensitive person, and I'm all about going along to get along, but no exaggeration. There are times when I have planes over my house every 30 to 45 seconds, and I have a rangefinder, and planes have flown over my house repeatedly, 300, 400 feet. I've had guests at the house where we're sitting outside or even indoors, where we have to stop our conversation because the plane that's flying overhead is so loud. And this goes on for hour upon hour upon hour, every day of the week. And I think it's, number one, a little bit unfair. We only bought this house a year ago, and the disclosures we got were minimal, to say the least. There was nothing about the extent of the aircraft traffic over this part of the neighborhood. You know, and besides the noise issue, I have a very important concern because of these airplanes that sometimes have to make emergency landings, pilots that have medical emergencies. If a plane if a pilot has a problem or the aircraft has a mechanical problem and they're 300 feet over the ground, they're coming down in our neighborhood. You could have I'm a private pilot, by the way. You could have all the contingency plans that you want, but if that engine cuts out and you're 300 feet off the ground, you're going to go into the neighborhood. You're going to crash into people's homes, and people are going to get hurt or killed. And that's not an exaggeration, because I mean, just look back at any of the news over the last year or 2 years. We had one plane come down on 5th Street just last year. I think it was in actually earlier this year in January, where the guy had a mechanical problem and he had to land on 5th Street between Victoria and Harbor. So this is a very real possibility. Had that pilot flown another 10 or 15 seconds west, he would have been directly over Oxnard Shores. And I wonder what would be said other than, you know, our thoughts and prayers are with the family. There would be a lot of responsibility to assign. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate all the work that you folks do for our community and for our city. Thank you.
And we do have one more, Steve Tannehill, promote you to a panelist.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, sir. You got 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you for the promotion, by the way. And thank you for all the authority members for the time and interest you're spending on this. I want to share with you my experience flying the proposed fly-friendly touch-and-go patterns at Oxnard. I flew with the chief flight instructor for the flight school based at Oxnard. As we taxied out to the runway, we requested right traffic. The tower challenged us, demanding to know, why do you want to do that? The flight instructor looked at me and then said, for practice and to fly neighborly. The tower responded saying, you know, we set the pattern, not the neighborhood, right? And then waited for the pilot to respond. When the pilot acknowledged their authority, the tower gave us approval to fly right traffic. We flew 2 loops using right traffic. We had no problem turning north crosswind prior to the canal, and on our downwind leg, we flew over the open fields north of Oxnard. We then flew 2 loops using left traffic. Flying this loop, again, we had no problem turning crosswind before the canal and keeping the downwind leg north of Woolley. We had no problem keeping that touch and go pattern close to the airport and away from homes in the shores, the harbor, and the neighborhoods and schools and retail shopping areas south of Woolley. Two members of the Airport Safety and Noise Committee monitored our flight while we were doing the pattern. They both said that these patterns were a vast improvement and would not present a problem to them if those conducting touch and go trainings at Oxnard would fly them. So I wanted to share that with you. And then also in response to Mr. Calhoun's comments, understandable comments, the proposal to go right traffic was actually made by 6 different pilots who live in the affected area and fly out of Camarillo and fly out of Oxnard. One of the pilots is a captain with an American Airlines and has flown American Eagle in and out of Oxnard back in the day. So they are all familiar with flying in and out of Camarillo, in and out of Oxnard, and it was their recommendation that we have pilots doing closed pattern work, touch and go patterns, request right traffic. Thank you for your time.
Okay, we have no more hands raised, but we have 11 written comments.
Okay, Mr. Steve Tannehill was one of the written comments. So he just did his verbal comment. So we now have 10 comments that will be read into the record. The first comment is from Arthur Bierman. Please adopt a fly-friendly protocol for planes conducting touch and go training flights at Oxnard Airport. Please instruct the flight schools, biplanes, as well as anyone who circles more than twice to stop using our airspace over Seabridge and Mandalay housing. Training students by circling over homes is not only noisy, but dangerous. When right traffic is not possible, please monitor all flying in as tight a pattern as possible, turning crosswind east of the canal and downwind well north of Woolley. End of comment from Arthur Bierman. The next comment is from Laura and Thomas Cook. It reads, Supervisor Ramirez, Councilman Camarillo, and other distinguished officials of the Airport Authority. We ask your assistance and understanding of the importance of allowing residents of our beach and harbor neighborhood a peaceful enjoyment of our homes. Unfortunately, the frequent touch and go training flights from Oxnard Airport over our neighborhood represent a noise problem and nuisance for us residents, as well as our pets and area birds and other wildlife. Not only do the aircraft fly over us frequently and repetitively, but they often fly low. Each time this occurs, we have to consider whether the pilots in training might crash land in the neighborhood or on the channels filled with boaters, boarders, and kayaks. That is not a pleasant way for us to spend a weekend. We request your approval of a fly-friendly protocol to help resolve this problem. Incidentally, sightseeing helicopters cause a similar problem in case that is also your bailiwick. Thank you very much, Laura and Thomas Cook. The next comment is from Dave and Peggy Cronshaw. It reads, we are longtime residents of Ventura County and Oxnard and strong supporters of our community. For many years, residents have been reporting to the Oxnard Airport noise line, the constant noise from our flight training schools and private aircraft owners practicing repeated training patterns. Our calls have yet to be addressed. These planes practice noisy, dangerously low, repeated touch and goes over our Oxnard neighborhoods. Touch and goes at Oxnard Airport account for over 60% of all Oxnard Airport traffic, with the majority originating from non-Oxnard based aircraft, bringing zero revenue to the airport. According to numerous pilots who have flown and trained out of Oxnard Airport, there is a solution that is approved by the FAA and can be practiced today. Whenever safe, repeated pattern pilots should request from the tower the ability for right traffic. Whenever safe, the tower should grant this right traffic request. When right traffic is not possible, pilots fly as tight a pattern as possible, turning crosswind well east of the canal and downwind well north of Woolley. This matter is of the utmost importance to the safety of our residents and pilots and the continued planning and growth for a safe community. This issue needs immediate attention. Thank you, Dave and Peggy Cronshaw. The next comment is from Carl and Sally Jones. It reads, Dear Ventura County Airport Authority and staff, please institute a fly-friendly pattern at Oxnard Airport where right pattern traffic is requested and used whenever possible. The airport has become a favorite of flight schools locally from the San Fernando Valley and Los Angeles and even Bakersfield for touch and goes and pilot training. This brings novice pilots repeatedly overhead. The current pattern is risky as it results in climbing and turning over residences when aircraft are most vulnerable and issues like engine failure much more dangerous. With right pattern, the climb and turn would occur over vacant fields. The climb and turn are also when these older piston-powered aircraft are at their loudest. Many residents have recorded sound levels over 90 dBA in their yards and homes during these training flights. Recent research has highlighted the significant health hazard at this noise level and above. When the training flights are at their busiest, 4 or 5 planes can be flying in the pattern at once, resulting in a flyover nearly every minute. The current traffic pattern also brings the planes over numerous schools, creating a risk to students. Right traffic would avoid this. Our goal is not to shut down Oxnard Airport, only to get neighborly flying instituted. Having pilots request and the tower approve a right traffic pattern whenever possible would mitigate many of these issues and result in safer airport operations. Please institute the fly-friendly guidelines. Carl and Sally Jones. The next comment is from Audrey Keller, Chair of the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council. It reads, Good evening, Supervisor Ramirez and Councilman Perello and other airport authority leaders. The simplest solutions are often the best, making Oxnard Airport the most friendly airport on the Central Coast. This starts with leadership and guidance. Airports, their customers, and the local homes and businesses must coexist peacefully. One minority group of student pilots for pleasure can't and shouldn't have their hobby impact thousands of residents. At this meeting, the neighborhood councils are asking the airport authority to approve and enforce a fly-friendly protocol for planes conducting touch-and-go training flights at Oxnard Airport. In layman's terms, that means we are asking the flight schools to stop training their students by circling over our homes again and again. Number one, student pilots request right traffic and the tower grants it when safe to do so. Number two, when right traffic is not possible, they fly as tight a pattern as possible, turning crosswind while east of the canal and downwind while north of Woolley. Number three, the Department of Airport conducts meetings, outreach with all the stakeholders, the neighborhood councils, the tower, the flight schools, the flight clubs, and pilots using Oxnard Airport for touch and goes to get everyone on the same page with respect to flying friendly at Oxnard Airport. This is beneficial to you as our civic leaders to ensure the public safety on the ground. It is also safer for the student pilots to fly over empty fields. That's why you teach your kids to drive in an empty parking lot on a quiet afternoon. It is safer for all of us, and that's the end of the 250 word limit. Kind regards, Audrey Keller, Chair of the Channel Islands Neighborhood Council. The next comment is from Christy and Daniel Martinez. It reads, Dear Ventura County Airport Authority and staff, we have been affected by the constant noise of the planes flying over our homes. We live in a quiet community with many retired folks and those working from home. We would appreciate you instituting a fly-friendly pattern at Oxnard Airport where right pattern traffic is requested and used whenever possible. The airport has become a favorite of flight schools locally from the San Fernando Valley and Los Angeles and even Bakersfield for touch and goes and pilot training. This brings novice pilots flying over our homes. This is risky and dangerous. In addition, residents have recorded sound levels over 90 dBA in their yards and homes during these training flights. Recent research has highlighted the significant health hazard at this noise level and above. She provides a website link. When the training flights are at their busiest, 4 or 5 planes can be flying in the pattern at once, resulting in a flyover nearly every minute. The current traffic pattern also brings the planes over numerous schools, creating a risk to students. Right traffic would avoid this. We do not want the Oxnard Airport to be closed, but would like to have neighborly flying instituted. Having pilots request and the tower approve a right traffic pattern whenever possible would mitigate many of these issues and result in safer airport operations. Please institute the fly-friendly guidelines. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, Christy and Daniel Martinez. The next comment is from Tom and Lauren McInally. Please adopt a fly-friendly protocol for planes conducting touch and go training flights at Oxnard Airport. Please instruct the flight schools, biplanes, as well as anyone who circles more than twice to stop using our airspace over Seabridge and Mandalay housing. Training students by circling over homes is not only noisy, but also dangerous. When right traffic is not possible, please monitor all flying in as tight a pattern as possible, turning crosswind east of the canal and downwind while north of Woolley. Number one, they request right traffic and the tower grants it when safe to do so. Number two, when right traffic is not possible, they fly as tight a pattern as possible, turning crosswind well east of the canal and downwind while north of Woolley. Number three, the Department of Airport conducts meetings, outreach with all the stakeholders, the neighborhood councils, the tower, the flight schools, the flight clubs, and pilots using Oxnard Airport for touch and goes to get everyone on the same page with respect to flying friendly at Oxnard. Tom and Lauren McInally. The next comment is from Robert Bob Nast. I have 2 points. The airport was there before most of the houses. Number one, the airport was there before most of the houses. Number two, without small airports like Oxnard, where are we supposed to train our future pilots? Best regards, Bob Nast, longtime Hollywood Beach resident and former Marine Corps helicopter pilot. The next comment is from John and Dina Schwalbach. It reads, Dear Ventura County Airport Authority and staff, please institute a fly-friendly pattern at Oxnard Airport where right pattern traffic is requested and used whenever possible. The airport has become a favorite of flight schools locally from the San Fernando Valley and Los Angeles and even Bakersfield for touch and goes and pilot training. This brings novice pilots repeatedly overhead. The current pattern is risky as it results in climbing and turning over residences when aircraft are most vulnerable, and issues like engine failure are much more dangerous. With right pattern, the climb and turn would occur over vacant fields. The climb and turn are also, I think they copied and pasted it, when these older piston-powered aircraft are at their loudest. Many residents have recorded sound levels over 90 dBA in their yards and homes during these training flights. Recent research has highlighted the significant health hazard at this noise level and above. A website link is inserted. When the training flights are at their busiest, 4 or 5 planes can be flying in the pattern at once, resulting in a flyover nearly every minute. The current traffic pattern also brings the planes over numerous schools, creating a risk to students. Right traffic would avoid this. Our goal is not to shut down Oxnard Airport, only to get neighborly flying instituted. Having pilots request and the tower approve a right traffic pattern whenever possible would mitigate many of these issues and result in safer airport operations. Please institute the fly-friendly guidelines. John and Dina Schwalbach. The last comment is from David Wolf Jr. It reads, Esteemed members of the Oxnard Airport Authority, I am a homeowner in Westport at Mandalay Bay and an ardent supporter of general aviation, albeit not an aviator myself. I am proud of our airports in Ventura County, not only because of the history and heritage they represent, but also because of the economic and civic value a thriving general aviation community endows on our city and county. Our airports existed long before most of the homes in the county were conceived. That said, the essential community support for general aviation requires a partnership between the airports, the aviators, and the neighborhoods. As neighbors, we must support the continued safe operation of the airport. We must recognize that weather or other temporary conditions require changes in flight patterns, appreciate that touch and go exercises are essential to the training of competent aviators, and concede that the noise thus generated is as necessary as that of traffic detouring during road construction. For their part, aviators and air traffic controllers must do what they can within the parameters of safe flight to sustain the goodwill of the community, especially when there are FAA-approved flight patterns to allow that. To do any less suggests a disregard for the ground bound and sets in motion events that could eventually curtail or end operations at the airport. Our community needs our airports and our airports need their community. Therefore, please institute the proposed fly-friendly protocols respectfully, David Wolf Jr. And that concludes the public written comments that were received.
Wow. Are there any other comments that we appear to have?
I think Bill has a question or a comment.
Yeah, Walter, one of the things that I think Dave needs to explain is that we are not losing any revenue because of, at the Department of Airports, because of doing landings. So it's almost like people may think that there's a landing fee of which we aren't collecting.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know, I don't know about you, but when I was listening to all of these testaments about principally the height of the aircraft, it seemed like in the direction of the aircraft, they all can't be wrong, and I think they all have a very credible and honest comments. But I also can't help but think, envisioning the required takeoff and landing requirements for pattern work at Oxnard, published some time ago, that if all these aircraft abided by those rules, for instance, 1,000 foot high on the pattern work, that these reports wouldn't have occurred, because so many of them are caused by low flight. And it seems like maybe enforcement or making the Oxnard Tower aware of the problem, and I don't think they are, would be one big step towards resolving a lot of these issues. I've taken the time to call them because of the just blatant, where someone's taken off and gone about a 45-degree angle, 200 or 300 feet over the city, like it was, and it's completely oblivious to the rules and regulations. So late in the 1980s, we had a situation where everyone was complaining, and we embarked on an authority, Oxnard Tower get together and alliance whereby we went over the rules and drafted new ones and revised them, and the tower personnel were all union at the time, by the way, not independent, but they were very cooperative, had no idea what was going on, and all worked towards improving the situation, and they did, and the problem went away. So I'm hopeful that some action like that, along with the other things we've discussed, can go towards seeing this problem mitigated for once and for all. And that's it. Are there any other comments, authority members?
I would motion to receive and file this item.
Second. All those in favor?
Mr.
Bert Perillo has a question or comment.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We need a roll call on this one for sure, but Mr. Nafty, thank you very much for the presentation, and the members of the public. Again, this has been a long time coming, and you have an opportunity. Mr. Nafty, I think, has put together a tremendous presentation for us. I want to thank Supervisor Long for calling and discussing some things with me, and I appreciate Mr. Nafty's work, and I appreciate Chair Calhoun's handling this meeting. Thank you. I will also support this item.
Are there any other comments, please? Could we ask for a roll call this time?
Supervisor Long?
Yes, and I agree that there's good dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilmember Perillo?
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Chair Calhoun.
Yes, please.
That motion passes unanimously.
Well,
Thank you. All right, next up, that ends it for the new business. Next is our director's report.
Hey, the last of the acting director's reports, which is exciting. I'm terrifically enthused about having the opportunity to work with our next guest. Can you roll ahead one, John? Keith Freitas, AAE Airports Director, and he's coming in next Monday, so a week from tonight, or a week from, I guess, in the morning, Monday morning. So he can unmute himself and join and say some nice things and paint a picture of the first 100 days or so.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for the opportunity. Looking forward to the opportunity to work with all of you. Obviously, building relationships is important. That's what I've done over the last 30 years, and it looks like we will continue to do that with Ventura County. That's one of the first things I've asked staff to kind of help me work setting up meetings with everybody I can, and in the first couple months. So that's kind of my goal. And with the public comment tonight, that is going to continue. Looking forward to that. But Ventura County, what a beautiful area, and two great, wonderful assets in those airports, and working together to see what we can do with them. Looking forward to that. So thank you again. And I don't know if anybody has any specific question, but I will see you soon, face to face.
Keith, this is Kelly Long. I just wanted to welcome you. Thank you for the invite, for accepting the invite to be here today. I just know that our community is very excited to have you join the team, and the acknowledgement of what you'll be doing for the next 100 days, and making sure that we are working with our staff and our pilots and our community members, I think is just crucial. As you heard it today, we have good discussions, and I really appreciate you being part of the team. And also Dave Naffy, I just wanted to say thank you so much for helping us as interim to navigate through so much as we bring on another team member. So I just wanted to say thank you and welcome. And Supervisor Ramirez?
Yes, I'll join in the welcome to Mr. Freitas, and thank you. And I'm so glad you were here to hear this this meeting where you heard a lot of the community concerns, and that's our job, to listen to the community and try to get to yes with everybody, addressing things that we could do to make things better for everybody. I do appreciate what Mr. Ness said in his comment. I will just say we do have a need for pilots, a need for training pilots. I have a nephew who's a pilot. I had an uncle who flew 199 missions during World War II, who was a hero at age 22, resupplied the line in China. So I know pilots who get their training in a local small airport can do great things, and we need that. So Mr. Freitas, I look forward to meeting with you and having more conversation about how to improve everything. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for being here today.
Supervisor, thank you, and look forward to it as well.
Go ahead, Mr. Perello.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, Mr. Brady says, council member, along with Councilmember Lopez from the city of Oxnard. City of Oxnard welcomes you on board. We hope to do great things with you. Thank you very much. And Mr. Nafty, appreciate all the work you did in this interim. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation tonight.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you.
I'll pick it up. I just have a couple things to say. Slide. And I will scoot, I promise. I'll be super brief. The runway, Oxnard runway 725 reconstruction is in progress and still on track to open 7 a.m. on the 5th. And we have a schedule for the grooving, which will be night work only from the 8th through the 17th. And we anticipate very little disruption to pilot activity unless you're flying later in the dark. And then taxiway connectors, that reconstruction is on track to be funded in 2022, so the following year. And so again, in discussion with FAA to get that funded. So slide. And then I just wanted to mention that we are proud owners of new property in the Camarillo Business Park. This is formerly DHS ICE building used for some sort of detention. So we're pleased that it's not used for that any longer. Prior to that, I'm sure it was used by the military for something very exciting, but we haven't kept track of what that might have been. But you know, we've received this property and we'll put it to good use. And I believe that's the end of my remarks. So I appreciate all the nice comments that you've provided to me, and it's been my distinct pleasure to serve this body and this airport, and I'm excited for the future. So thank you.
And we have a couple questions. Bert first.
Yes, I appreciate the information. Mr. Nafty, one question. Reading an article in today's LA Times, there's a story about the city of Wasco and something that happened up there. On this building that we now have, is there any asbestos that we would be required to clean up from? And if there is there ability for the people that had it to be responsible and not us? Can somebody please check that? That's my question. Thank you.
Take the IU. Thank you.
Okay, we'll look into that. And Supervisor Ramirez?
I just want to add my thanks to Mr. Naffi for taking care of the airport. And during this period, I know it's not always easy to be the interim anything. And I'm also really glad that ICE is not using that building and has turned it over to better use. Thank you. Congratulations, stick around, don't go anywhere.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're moving on to our reports. Is there any questions on our reports? In hearing none, we will move on to our correspondence. Are there any questions on our correspondence? Okay, well then we'll move it on to the authority comments. Does any authority members have any comments on today or any other items? Yes, please, Bill.
I just so it's not misinterpreted on my reluctance to have the community do a major pitch to the authority. I think that we all recognize that there's some issues that need to be taken care of. I just am not thinking that having them come in front of the political piece of it before they can sit down and talk with the folks that we're going to ask to take care of the problem is the right order. If they need to come back to us a slightly later point because nothing's getting done, then I'll be happy to champion it. But I just would like to see it taken into the action side of it instead of the talking side. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Thomas. And any others? I just really, again, want to say thank you to Keith being here tonight. I know it wasn't he's not started with us yet, but just appreciated your involvement already on this. As you can hear from our community and our authority members, we are very eager to start projects or continue projects. It's been a busy time with COVID and then doing the interim and so forth. And so we look forward to your engagement in the community, and then also to be reporting back to us and getting us engaged with you in assisting on some of the issues that are most important to both of our airports. So I really appreciate it. And Dave, just want to say thank you to you and our staff for taking on the extra roles of so much that our authority doesn't even know all the ins and outs, because you all did it so seamlessly to keep on Oxnard for the repaving and just there's just a list of things that you guys have been doing with the website and information and so forth. So I really do appreciate it. It was a heavy lifting, and I'm really happy to have Keith joining us. It's going to make our staff even more robust, and just really appreciate it. So thank you very much. With that, we have Bert Perlow.
Yes, I was not going to weigh into this one, but I think Mr. Thomas needs at least my support on this matter. I believe he's right. As a member of the public that used to ask questions quite a bit before I was elected, I always thought that the electeds would always be able to answer, and that staff would take the public's word and give you the right answer. Once you become elected and you find out how it works, not to stonewall it, but to get to some accurate answers, Mr. Thomas is right on, to bring the public and have them confront the agencies without the data so that everybody can agree this is the correct data, is a waste of time, and it builds up people's animosities, hopes, and fears to levels unnecessary, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to offend anybody, but Mr. Thomas, you were right, and I need to support that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bert.
All right, and with that, if we don't have any further comments, then we will be adjourned to our next meeting. And thank you so much for everyone's time and effort onto our airports. Fly safe to everyone, and thank you so much. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Bye.